To my next guest, Congressman Niki Tsongas. She's a Hillary Clinton supporter, so we're just going to assume she believes her candidate won last night and move on. But we do have plenty to talk about. From the place where most good ideas go to die, that's the United States Congress, unfortunately. Congresswoman, it's great to see you.
Thank you.
You signed a letter with your colleagues saying it's time for common sense gun reform. Apparently, 80% of Republicans and Democrats agree with you on pieces of that, but there's no chance this is going anywhere this round, is there?
There seems to be no chance. It's yet another example. Immigration reform was another matter. The House, the United States Senate passed a bipartisan bill, never brought to a vote, to the floor for a vote in the House of Representatives. Gun control, yet another example, despite the horrific and repeated instances of mass killing. So it's very unfortunate.
If you could apply sodium pentothal to one of your most conservative Republican colleagues and ask him or her, why are you not for background checks when 80% of the people in your own party and in the NRA support this? What would they say under the influence of that drug?
Well, I'd like to apply the drug just to find out for myself, because it's hard to tell. It really is hard to tell where the deep resistance is. And it's true, for example, on climate change as well. All the science shows that this is obviously an issue we have to contend with, and yet it's a third rail. You cannot really discuss it. There's never any legislative opportunity to deal with it.
Speaking of hopeless, is there any chance there'll be a speaker in the near future? And is there any hope that he or she will be somebody who actually thinks of working across the aisle, or is that ridiculous?
Well, we have to hope. I think Speaker Boehner showed a willingness when push came to shove to work across the aisle. He knew government had an obligation to function. I think Paul Ryan, who is the candidate that we hear about most often, understands that as well. He worked with Senator Patty Murray to put together a budget agreement for 2 years that relieved the impact of the sequester and brought some rationality to the federal budget. So he would be somebody who understood that, and yet you do hear from Tea Partiers that he's perhaps too liberal.
And this could be a nightmare come the end of the year, right, with some pretty major moments, no?
I worry very much, because raising the debt ceiling, likely linked to defunding Planned Parenthood, the effort to fund our government could, if we can't come up with an agreement, could lead to a shutdown with real consequence for the American people and the economy of this country that we have all worked so hard to right.
You know, Congresswoman, you were one of the few people who's worked successfully in a bipartisan way on an issue that matters. You have really sort of opened America's eyes to this horrible sexual assault crisis in the military. I want to talk about another issue in the military, women in combat. I understood, and apparently wrongly, that the Pentagon had decided that in the beginning of 2016, women would be in combat. But then I read the Marines have this study which apparently says, well, actually, the results of mixed units, mixed gender units, are horrible. They're going to oppose it. What's going to happen? What's the deal here?
Well, General Ray Odierno, who was the Chief of Staff of the Army, who just retired, said, you know, we can't have the best Army in the world if we don't open up every position to women. We can't shut out 50% of our population. We lose great talent that we need to do everything we need to do. And so that effort has begun, but the services were given a chance to, first of all, analyze what the gender-neutral standards should be for each job. And the Army, I think, is going to follow suit and open every position. The Marine Corps have expressed some reluctance to several of those positions.
Can they opt out if they choose?
Well, it will come down to our Secretary of Defense, who has indicated he has reservations about their position. So,
you know who else has questions which surprise me? Your fellow member of the Armed Services Committee, Seth Moulton, was on the radio with us the other day. He served with women and men on one of his 4 tours in Iraq. He said he's not 100% convinced yet. He wants to hear what that report that hasn't been released. Are you surprised by that?
Well, I know we had a hearing with the Marine Corps and the other services, and the Marine Corps really does focus on unit cohesion more than it focuses on the individual doing the job. I'm not sure unit cohesion is the right measure. If you put people in who can do the job, the unit will work together. I mean, that's one of the great strengths of the military, is just the support they have for one another, but it's dependent upon everybody doing their job. And if you can get a woman in there who does the job she's tasked to do, then she should be part of it as well.
You were 100% committed that women can do whatever, assuming they have the physical abilities, they can do whatever men can do in combat.
They have to demonstrate that, or they won't be eligible for the positions.
Last thing, you're a supporter of the Iran nuclear deal. You've praised Secretary Moniz as not only competent but a local, John Kerry competent but a local. Did the administration drop the ball when they didn't demand as a condition the release of people like this Jason Rezaian, who's the Washington Post reporter just convicted of espionage in a secret trial? Should he have been part of the demand we put in this discussion?
I think the singular focus in the Iran nuclear deal was preventing Iran from developing a capability to developing a nuclear weapon for the next 15 years. Over and over and over again, that's what we heard. Members of the Democratic caucus had an opportunity to meet with the ambassadors from Russia, from France, from Great Britain, from the European Union, from Germany. It was very clear that this is what they wanted to be part of, and it took the P5+1 working with us to get that done. The reality is, though, it doesn't take care of all the bad things Iran does. And this is yet an example of where we have work to do and have to hold their feet to the fire and get his release.
We're only at 15 seconds. Are we going to end up doing a prisoner trade for this guy and 2 other Americans held there? Is that what the end of the day is going to be?
It remains to be seen, but obviously we can't forget him and we won't.
Congresswoman Tsongas, it's great to see you as always. Thanks so much for your time.